Bachelor of Law degree with the University of South Africa, and he currently holds a BSc Environmental Management degree, a National Diploma in Environmental Management, and a Diploma in Health and Safety Management, as well as various other certificates related to the field of environmental management and law. Mr. McConey worked for the City of Johannesburg as a specialist waste management in waste management regulation within the Infrastructure and Services Department for a period of 6 years, where he developed many strategic general waste management documents, tools, and projects for the city. He's currently an assistant director in the National Department of Environmental Affairs in the branch of hazardous waste management, and he is responsible for hazardous waste management policy development and implementation of the Waste Act. He's also a member of the Institute of Waste Management of Southern Africa, which is a multidisciplinary nonprofit association committed to supporting professional waste management practices in South Africa. We also have today another presenter, Ms. Mamshela Kagoli. She is the manager of the waste assurance at the National Health Laboratory Service, NHLS, where she is responsible for the National Waste Management Program. She has a B.Tech degree in environmental health and a BA in environmental management with 18 years of work experience in environmental health and waste management. Prior to joining NHLS, she held the position of Assistant Director, Hazardous Waste Management Support in the South African National Department of Environmental Affairs for 5 years, where she was, among other things, involved in the development of national policy, regulatory interventions for the management of healthcare risk waste. She also practiced as an environmental health practitioner, an EHP, for 10 years at a local municipality. So with that, I would like to turn it over, and I'm looking forward to hearing the experiences from both Kagiso and Mamshela. Thank you.
Yes, Anaf, you are muted. Anaf, you are muted.
Thank you, Dev. Over to you, Kagiso. Whilst Kagiso is setting up, I just want to say, Kagiso will give us the legislative perspective, and then Mamshela will then follow up from the implementation side, from the NHLS perspective. Kagiso, thank you. We can see your screen. Probably you could just Kagiso, you probably need to change your display settings to show one screen, just like you did the other time.
Unmute him, he's muted.
Okay.
Hello,
yeah,
okay.
Kagiso, can you?
Unmuted now.
Thank you.
Can you all hear me?
We can hear you now. Can you change your display settings to one screen?
Okay, let me just.
Yeah.
Oh, is that okay?
Thank you. Over to you.
Okay.
Please go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for availing me your time. I'm not going to waste as much time. And you can put forth any questions that we can take after our presentations. My contact numbers are here for your considerations. I'll go straight into it. The presentation outline is here. I'll be taking you through our legislative framework, the authorizations, the lessons learned in the development of our legislation, the Basel Convention, and the important links which I think everyone will will consider. So basically, like any other country, the Constitution is the supreme law of our land in South Africa. And Section 24, it talks to the protection of environmental resources through various legislative means. With that in place, as a country, we decided that we're going to form a waste act. And this act was formed in the year 2008 and is the overall act which looks at all waste management within the country. So from that act, there's a section where it talks to the National Waste Information Regulations. So basically, the regulations are where in relation to waste management, it talks to issues of your transporters, your generators that on a certain monthly basis, they're gonna need to report into how much they are generating and how much they are contributing in their own specific establishment. So these are all regulations which are in place, and we also have the norms and standards for storage of waste. So this here, when you want to store waste, depending on the threshold. So here you're gonna need to stipulate that the type of waste and how it needs to be stored. I mean, obviously you can't just put hazardous waste in an open field, but you're gonna have to follow certain waste. So the norms and standards, guys, everyone wants to be storing waste to form part of that. So it's also the norms and standards for the assessment of waste for landfill disposal. So basically, these are standards that one needs to consider before disposing waste in a different type of landfills that we have. I mean, your type 1 to type 0 to type 3 type of waste that you're going to dispose. We also have the norms and standards. I spoke to that one. So that's the act. The Act also makes waste to the list of waste management activities. So basically, these are the activities that, let's say now you want to start up an incinerator. So then what do you need to do? You're going to need to go through your various environmental authorizations, then basically show us that you have the capacity to even be able to treat it. We also have the draft National Healthcare Waste Management Regulations. So basically, as I'm saying, for more info, colleagues will just have to go, you'll follow the links and you'll get most of these things and also the questions later on. So we also have regulations on how healthcare risk waste needs to be managed. So we also have your national policy on thermal treatment of general waste. So this is where South Africa took a stand that for there are various types of technologies that we'll be using for thermal use, the issues of incineration, pyrolysis, gasification. So we also have your National Air Quality Act, Section 21, where basically when you want to start up an incinerator or any type of activity that's going to emit, you're going to need to apply, then you're going to get an atmospheric emissions license. The National Health Act, this act makes for provision for an appointment of a healthcare waste control officer, depending on your establishment, whether it's big or small. There needs to be someone who
Hello.
Hearing him.
Anafi, you are muted.
Mute. You are on mute, Anafi. Unmute yourself.
Hello. I was wondering whether I'm the one with lost network, but looks like I think I can't hear.
It seems it is him who has lost network.
Marcella, are you able to get hold of him? Marcella, can you hear me?
Hi, Anafi.
Hi.
Yes.
Are you? Yes.
Let me come get hold of him. I'll mute and get hold of him.
Okay, thank you. Apologies. Looks like we've lost the presenter. Let's try and give him a few minutes to probably reconnect.
Hi, Anafi. Sorry about that.
Yes.
I think he's disconnected.
Okay.
So can I maybe load mine and then I proceed then while he's trying to sort himself
I
out?
think that's better. So unfortunately, we have lost the first presenter. He was presenting on the legislative aspect of waste management from the South African perspective. Given the situation, we will jump into the second presentation in which Marcella from NHS will take us through what they are doing in adherence to the legislation that he was giving us. Thank you, Marcella. You can go ahead.
Good afternoon, everyone. As it
Kindly
is-
also change your settings to present the other one.
Can you see my presentation?
Yes, but kindly click on display settings and choose the other option.
Because the settings it's on my side is the presentation setting.
So probably we need the other one for view, because we are seeing two of your screens.
Oh. And now?
You've removed the presentation, eh?
You removed the presentation.
Can you put back the presentation and maybe we can
Put
troubleshoot?
back the presentation.
Yeah?
Okay, let me just
Put back the presentation as it was.
okay. Can you see it?
Yes, we
Now
can
you
see.
can put in,
You can see it. Is it on presentation mode?
it's loading.
Not yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
And now?
Can you go where it's written display settings on your screen? Right there. The second bar after show task.
Continue moving your cursor up. Continue moving the
Left.
cursor.
To the left, top left, up,
Top left, yes.
where it's written display settings, just click the arrow pointing down. Next to show taskbar.
I don't have that on my side.
Okay.
Are you seeing up where there is end slide show, like where your cursor is, where there is slide show? So the next one is display settings. Can you come here?
It's not there on my side.
Okay.
All right. So probably we could just go ahead.
Okay, can I just present?
Please go ahead.
Okay, then. Apologies about that. Okay, this is the outline of my presentation, and without any waste of time, can I just go to my introduction slide? In South Africa, we have about 9 provinces throughout the country, and we have a population currently of about 58 million people. And in 2018, according to our waste information statistics, South Africa generated about 50 million kilograms of healthcare risk waste. And as the NHLS, which is the National Health Laboratory Service, we provide laboratory and related public health services to over 80% of our population. And we operate a network of about 350 laboratories, which are spread out through the 9 provinces in the country. And through our waste information system, this is our internal waste information system, we have identified that we generate on average 1.5 million kilograms of healthcare risk waste per annum. And of that 1.5 million kilograms, we generate about 110,000 kilograms of chemical waste per annum. And as Kagiso was still taking us through the legislative tools that we have in the country, our legislation or draft legislation on healthcare risk waste management is based on the South African national standards, and this standard is called the Management of Healthcare Risk Waste in a Healthcare Facility. This is the SANS 2248. So this is just to show you the outline of what is contained in this standard, and this standard can be found on the, you can go to the link at the bottom and get more information on this. And internally as the NHS, we have developed our own policy that is also informed by the SANS 1024, the national standard that I just referred to. And mainly this policy is developed to reinforce that NHS is committed to protecting the health and safety of employees, the public, and the environment it operates in. So in the policy, we outline the purpose of the policy, the scope which covers all the laboratories that we operate in the country, the responsibilities. This would be the responsibilities divided in terms of whether is it managers' responsibility, the responsibility of the laboratory manager, the responsibility of the technicians, and the responsibilities of the cleaners in the facilities. We also define the different waste streams that we generate in the organization. We outline the waste management procedures that we follow in the organization. We have also what is called the waste management plans. This is also a requirement in the standards, the national standards, that all generators of healthcare risk waste, especially major generators, and these are those who generate more than 20 kilograms of waste on a daily average, are required to have a waste management plan. And in this plan, you will tell us exactly what is it that you are generating and how you intend to manage this waste from point of generation up until disposal or treatment. We also outline the different audits that we undertake in the organization to ensure compliance. We have a record keeping and reporting online system as well, and this is also outlined in the policy that we have. We also talk about training, what type of training is required to ensure that our waste is safely and legally managed in the organization. And we also touch on the health and safety aspects. We were requested to talk a little bit about how we manage our waste, and specifically viral load or waste from viral load diagnosis. And we thought it would be prudent that we talk about liquid waste management. So what happens in our organization, as it is outlined in our policy and procedures, is that we firstly have to identify the waste. You firstly have to indicate, is this waste hazardous waste or is it general waste? That's if you are in a laboratory, as a laboratory or as a technician, you have to identify, is it general waste or is it hazardous waste? And once we have established that, then you say, okay, now this is hazardous waste. How do I then manage it moving forward? There are liquid waste that are allowed down the municipal sewer. This is from the municipalities that give us authorization whether to put liquid waste down the drain or not. And those liquid waste that are not allowed down the municipal sewer, we are now required to put them in drums, such as the one that we have in that picture that we have displayed. And these drums cost us about, or the industry charges us about, or charges in the region of $35 US for the container for transportation and treatment of this waste. So these containers, we then label them, and on the label we have to indicate what is in the drum, the name of your laboratory, the date that you have opened this liquid waste drum, and the date that you close the liquid waste drum. The third step would then be the internal transportation of our waste from the point of generation to the storage area. When the drums are then full, the laboratory staff will then collect the drums and take them to the storage area. And this, we also use the waste tracking forms where you indicate the number of drums that you have produced for collection or removal to the storage area, what is contained in the drums, and somebody or from the laboratory needs to sign confirming that this waste was removed from the laboratory. This waste would then be taken to a demarcated, labeled, and access control areas that are within our facilities, and this will be stored up until the transporter or the service provider comes and collects the waste. And then the fourth step, which will now involve the external contractor coming to our sites and collecting, and this is as and when required by the laboratories. The service provider then, when they collect the waste, they are required by law to generate what is called a waste manifest. And in the waste manifest, basically, it says that this is the waste stream that you are collected, that you have produced, and this is what we are collecting today. The date that waste was transported, the quantity of the containers that were collected, and the different types of waste that they've collected. And the fifth steps, which is now, once waste has been removed from our facilities, is now taken for either disposal or for thermal treatment. And AThermal and EnviroServe are some of the facilities that we use in the country for treatment and disposal or disposal of chemical waste and liquid waste. And I have also included the links so that you can see more or have more information on these two facilities. The sixth step now talks about the proof of destruction. I mentioned earlier on that the service provider leaves you with a waste manifest, and once they have disposed the waste or the waste has been destructed, they would then return what is called a proof of destruction. This allows us to track the waste from the point of generation. As I mentioned earlier on, that internally we also have a tracking form. From the tracking form, then it moves on to the waste manifest, and when you receive your destruction certificate, then we can be satisfied that your waste has been safely and legally handled. And the seventh step, internally I've mentioned that we have an online waste information system. This is our occupational health and safety information system, shortly called OHASIS. On the system, this is where we report our waste management as well. And this, as I've mentioned, it also helps us to close the gaps. It helps from the point of generation to the point of disposal. As an organization, we are able to see how much we have generated from each facility, and we are also able to see how much we have generated collectively as an organization. And this information, if needed by the authorities, we are able then to submit it to the authorities. It also assists our laboratories to see exactly how much and compare how much of waste are they generating and compare it to the workload that they have to handle on a daily basis. We also have to ensure that there's compliance monitoring in the organization, or to ensure that we legally and safely manage our waste internally. We conduct ad hoc inspection of our laboratories and their waste storage facilities. We also have a safety, health, and environment team that conducts annual audits of the facilities. We have our quality management team as well that also do their annual quality management audits, and this includes the SHE parts in their audits. We also have inspection of waste treatment and disposal facilities. This is also done by our SHE teams, would go out to the different facilities that we work with, and just to ensure that they handle our waste in a legal manner. We also get from time to time inspections from our authorities. This would be your environmental practitioners, your environmental management inspectors. These are called the green scorpions in our country, that they would go to any facility and do their inspections. We also have inspections from the Department of Labor. And I must inform you that from the Waste Act, there are penalties if you don't comply to the provisions of the Act. And if you are found to have been on the wrong side of the law, you may be convicted or you may be liable for a fine not exceeding 10 million rands, which is about $600,000 or so, or you may be jailed for a period of not more than 10 years, or you may be both jailed or fined. And as in our last slide, these are the challenges that and barriers that we encounter as we manage our waste in our facility. Firstly, we don't have specific legislation. You'll see when Kagiso presents that we don't have any specific legislation on the management of laboratory waste. And another challenge is lack of financial and human resources in our facilities from point of generation up until disposal facilities. And one other problem that or challenge that we sit with is the introduction of new technology in our laboratories. That means now the volume of waste goes up and the toxicity of waste also becomes a challenge for us. And another problem that we sit with is that there's lack of extended producer responsibility. Our suppliers are not really involved in how we manage our waste. And another challenge is that it is expensive to manage healthcare risk waste, as I've indicated that the industry charges about $35 for the liquid waste drums. And lastly, we've established that we don't have sufficient training, or our waste handlers are not sufficiently trained from the point of generation up until the disposal of the waste that we generate. And with that, colleagues, I'd like to say thank you.
Thank you very much, Marcella, for the session. Before we jump into questions, I'm happy to inform you that Kagiso is back, and we hopefully he can finish off the earlier presentation in the next 5 to 10 minutes, 20 minutes for discussion. Kagiso.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, you can share your presentation.
Okay.
You can go ahead without video. I think it's still fine.
Okay, so everyone can see the presentation?
Put in presentation mode, please.
Okay. Let's just see. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, because I think I was, okay, yeah, no, I think I was here. Yeah, I was on the National Road Traffic Act. We also have your Hazardous Substances Act, this one which is done by colleagues from the Labor Department, as Marcella has indicated. We also have your Occupational Health and Safety Act. This is the act which governs, for each and every facility, for employees and those things. We also have your hazardous biological agents regulations in place, and Masha has already touched on the South African national standards. Yeah, what I can mention is that these are standards which are set by in South Africa, Peru, the SABS. I'm sure most of you may have heard of it, which these are guidelines on certain ways of how certain containers need to look like and for best practices. So even in provinces, they are referred to as provincial legislation. Maybe I need to mention that in South Africa, we have close to 9 provinces, and amongst all the 9 provinces, it's only 2 which have their own regulations, specifically on healthcare risk waste. So this is one of those challenges that we as a country are facing. Obviously, Gauteng, they have their own, which is how they monitor each and every healthcare risk waste within their country. And we also have the Western Cape. This is Western Cape would be where your Cape Town. I'm sure most of you would have heard of Cape Town. So they also have their own regulations on how to manage healthcare risk waste. On a local level, we have your municipal bylaws. Basically, this one are on solid waste, air quality, and sanitation. Also on your water, and everybody may know. And within a municipality, what they do is that they need to plan for 5 years through an IDP. So in this IDP, they would mention to all as to how they're going to put forth provisions of waste collection and services. And according to the Act, each and every city, big or small, they need to have the municipality. Need to have an integrated waste management plan where they need to tell and state how they're going to be handling their waste within those certain time periods. And the Act also makes provisions for penalties in relation to non-compliances. I think Marsha just touched on that one. So this one you can find in Chapter 7. These are penalties where you can get 10 million or 5 million, depending on the severity of your non-conformances. So basically for us, the authorizations which are in place to ensure that everything is managed well. We have your, what you call your EIA regulations. So basically for each and every construction or anything, whether in an upgrading of a facility, whether you're decommissioning, you're gonna have to conduct some sort of environmental awareness. Depending on the size of the project, it will determine whether you take the EIA route or the basic assessment route. We also have those, the Waste Act make provisions for where you need to, there are listed activities. I'll give you example. Let's say now you want to establish an incinerator or a thermal plant. You're gonna need to apply, and based on the threshold and the type of activity that we are doing, it'll be a trigger as to whether you trigger a listed activity. It also goes in relation to if you're going to store. What we'll need to know if there are certain thresholds there, whether you're going to store for 2 days, 3 days, for how long, and those things. So the healthcare risk waste regulations, that which I mentioned for the 2 provinces, mostly are for your transportation licenses. As Marcella has said, issues of having your MSD, DS, making sure that all your truck is roadworthy and it can be seen and is visible that it's carrying hazardous waste. And also with your air quality regulations, I mean, if you're going to set up an incinerator, obviously you're going to need to comply to the AEL requirements. So lessons learned when we were developing our legislation. In South Africa, we found that consultation is a key factor, and I mean, it's legislated, and one of the core pillars of our constitution, it says that for each and everything that you do, you need to consult. Many court cases have been lost due to the issue of a minister not consulting. So these are one of the greatest things. For each and every legislation in our country, we're gonna need to consult, or it will be deemed unconstitutional. Intergovernmental relations are built. This lesson we learned when we were doing the healthcare risk waste regulations. What happened was that we promulgated our act. However, the Department of Health were the ones who were mandated with healthcare risk waste. However, a waste act also needs to cover, what is this thing? Healthcare risk waste. So in the beginning, there were no talks and everything. So both the minister, our minister, and the Department of Health agreed that we needed to form a task team, but at least now we have one form, which is a draft, which still needs to be signed into law, and they'll be implemented as such. And one of the things we've realized is that there's a better working relations between government and the private sector. I'll give you a typical example. When South Africa was hit by listeriosis, had it not that, because we as government and the private sector meet once, and that's why we have our healthcare risk waste forum. So from your transporters, your product manufacturers, everybody all sit under one roof. We discuss lessons learned and everything. So when we had that listeriosis, luckily this forum was the one where it was discussed, solutions were brought there, certain issues, those challenges that private sector would have had. I mean, issues of ensuring that the waste licenses ensures that it takes a certain capacity over the that which is normally required. So basically that one was done. So basically those are some of the lessons in relation to when government and private sector work together. And generally, when there are regular compliance audits and authorizations by the regulated community, there's always compliance, because one of the license conditions is that every second year there needs to be every license holder needs to call forth every role player, government also involved, and they go us through their license, their challenges, and also their internal and external audits. So that one also helps. Okay, so I'm quickly going to catch up on the Basel Convention. So the convention, I'm just going to sum it up. So basically, this is a convention which allows for countries to bring in waste and for us to take out waste. As we know in the past, I mean, developing countries, especially African developing countries, were seen as sort of like
So, can you hear me?
Hello?
Kahiso, can you hear us? Looks like we have lost him again.
Oh my.
All right. Let me see. Marcella, are you able to just, if I share the screen, are you able to continue?
Hello?
Hello, Marcella. Would you want me to, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Anna.
If we share the slides, are you able to continue, or would you want me to just pass through the Basel Convention?
Just hold on for me. Let me just hold on for me.
Put it up. Can you see my screen? Hello?
Hi, Anna.
Can you see my screen?
No.
Okay. Others, Nicholas, can you see my screen?
Yes, I can see your screen.
Okay. Okay, those that are not speaking, kindly mute yourself.
Okay.
So I think
your screen, Anafi.
All right, so let me try to just see if I can do the little bit I can with the last few slides. With the Basel Convention is the convention that really governs movement of waste from country to country. So based on this, ideally, most countries, I think, do not really entertain waste coming from another country. So there has to be severe, I think, or very necessary, I think, situations in which waste could actually move from one point to the other. Initial discussions with Kahiso was mentioning that ideally, I think they take only from fellow Southern African countries, but for that to happen, there has to be, I think, several documentation that needs to be put in place, what type of waste it is, including its origin and the reason for import. And most of the time it's because our fellow countries may not be actually having the necessary facilities to have the waste being treated in their own country. I also understand that they also allow, I think, transit of waste through the borders of South Africa, in which similar documentation such as type of waste, quantity, the country of origin, and where it's going. I think it's also incumbent upon each and every country to make sure that these Basel Conventions yet to, and notification of such happening should be given prior to the waste really coming in full, and all these documents should be particularly in completed fully and done in the period that is has been stipulated. Since I'm not really an expert in this field, fortunately he put an email in which they can actually attend to all these issues. So I'm sure, I think there may be other colleagues of us who may want to get in touch with South Africa and probably see whether this is something that is and he also provided some links that we are going to be able to share with you. And here are his contact details. So at least I've managed to complete the presentation. Unfortunately, we lost the presenter. So thank you very much, both Mashela and Kagiso. We have about 18 minutes to go, and I think both have presented quite interesting perspectives. I'll let Nicholas handle the question and answer segment. Those that have questions, please kindly write them in the chat box, and Nicholas will actually read them out. And we
okay, thank you very much, Anafi. The first question is from XGN9. She's asking, what is the annual cost of the program? What is the annual cost of the program?
Yes, I just wanted to check, is this the annual cost of managing waste in organization? Because that would, if it's just the cost of exactly how much does it cost us just to generate and dispose this waste? It cost us in the region of 40 million rands. This is how much we paid last year for just for the waste containers. This would be for the waste containers, the transportation of waste, and the treatment or disposal of the waste that we generate. But this is
40 million rand is like how many US dollars?
It's plus minus $3 million US in that region.
Beg your pardon?
About 300 million, sorry, $3 million.
Okay, thank you very much. The other question is from Anafi, and it also comes to you, and is saying, you said industry charges $35 for that container. How big, stroke volume or weight is it? Can you briefly restate what this cost covers? The container you talked about that is charged for $35, how big is it? And can you restate what the cost covers?
Okay. The drums are 20-liter drums, and the cost includes the actual container itself, the transportation of the container from the generator to the disposal or treatment site, and also includes treatment and all the documentation that goes with it.
Okay, thank you. Then the other one is from Piako, and she is asking, how can waste generated by both the chemistry and hematology analyzers be disposed of? How can waste generated by both the chemistry and hematology analyzers be disposed of?
Okay, in our case, it depends on, firstly, as I've mentioned, that the local municipality issues authorization for effluent disposal. So it depends. If the municipality comes to your facility and they allow you to put the waste down the drain, it will go down the drain. But the waste that is not allowed to go down the drain will then be disposed in those 20-liter drums. So it basically depends on the municipalities as well. And your MSDSs, of course.
Okay, thank you. The other question from Dr. Chais is, you mentioned that you require the waste handling company to show you a proof of destruction. Who gives this proof of destruction, and how do you ensure that it is not doctored, stock forged? Repeating the question, you mentioned that you require the waste handling company to show you a proof of destruction. Who gives this proof of destruction, and how do you ensure that it is not doctored, stock forged?
Oh, okay. What happens is that with the whole waste manifest documents is that you get them in, service providers have triplicate books, of which the first receipt that you receive would be the top one. then you as the generator, you have to sign firstly when your waste is removed. That's the first step. You have to sign to confirm that what they are claiming to have collected is true. And then secondly, when the waste is collected or it's taken to a treatment facility, the treatment facility would then sign that they have received the waste. And once that it's treated, then they would send back, the treatment facility would then send back the proof of destruction. So what we do as NHLS and also the authorities is that from time to time, we go to these facilities to verify that what they are telling us is true. So there's a system, and as I've said, that in the country, you are also, it's a legal requirement, firstly, to have this waste manifest or this destruction certificate. And the authority, and from time on monthly basis, actually, the treatment facilities are required to report to the authorities. So this can, this proof of destructions and the whole waste manifest system can be verified that what they are telling us is true or not. And we are able to go back, whenever we have questions, we are able to go back and talk to our service providers, because they also have on their side, they have the electronic system on their side that us as their clients are also able to access to verify that what they are telling us on the actual document. And every stage when waste is collected is weighed. When it gets to the treatment facility is also weighed. So every stage up until the waste is destroyed, there is weighing that takes place and confirmation that what you are or what they have said in the document is true.
Okay, thank you. The other question from POD 6 is, does the waste disposal for chemicals involve purification or landfill? Once again, does the waste disposal for chemicals involve purification or landfill? Yes, Marcella, you muted.
Yes, I'm not aware of any purification that takes place at the facilities, but what we have, it can be depending on whether the authorization of the disposal facility allows for them to accept that chemical that we are sending to them. It can be landfilled, or chemicals can be encapsulated, or they can be taken to the incinerators for destruction. So these are the options that we are aware of in the country.
Okay, thank you. Then a question from Nance Bowen from Kenya. Are the containers reusable? Are the containers reusable? The ones you talked about.
The containers, it's single-use containers. Once you have put in the waste, you are not allowed by law to decant any hazardous waste from one container to another. So once it's full, it goes as is and you don't get it back.
Okay, thank you. Then the other question from Sin Dogmo is saying, I might have missed this, but I would like to know whether South Africa has infrastructure to handle all its waste, and is there slack capacity for South Africa to handle disposal of waste from other countries? If South Africa is short in capacity, where, in brackets, which countries have you been shipping waste for disposal? Repeating once again, I might have missed this, but I would like to know whether South Africa has infrastructure to handle all its waste. And is there space, maybe, is there space or capacity for South Africa to handle disposal of waste from other countries? If South Africa is short in capacity, where and which countries have you been shipping your waste for disposal?
Hello? Hello? Oh, hi.
We are getting you.
Oh, you can hear me? Oh, okay. I'll Shesha, you'll add where I missed it. In South Africa, there are certain type of waste which we do not allow. I mean, issues of your asbestos. I mean, asbestos is one of the waste stream we as a country are also struggling with. However, I can tell you there was once a stockpile project. That's where South Africa, I remember, we did not have the capacity to treat basically what happened within the stockpile project was that they were used pesticides. So this used pesticides, we did not have the capacity to be able to handle them, but that was in the past. But thus far, we have companies which are able to deal specifically with hazardous waste. And maybe what I can mention here is that the infrastructure is there, even though it might not be as much, but because most of the hazardous chemicals which are brought into the country are handled by our private counterparts. So they also do have capacity, because over and above the landfilling, there are also certain technologies which are in place. I think Sheshe mentioned them, your EnviroServes and everything. In relation to healthcare risk waste, we have many technologies in place, and what can I say? There are many companies which are now falling, and we're getting more applications for establishing more licenses. The other one, shipping for disposal. Thus far, we do not do any shipping for disposals, but as a result is that we do have waste coming into the country. I'll give an example, like most SADC countries, we do allow them to bring in their waste into this site because of an arrangement, and some of those countries we do not have the same infrastructure as we have. Maybe that which we ship out or that we do take out, mostly it wouldn't be for disposal. However, it would be electronic waste. You know, once you have recovered those precious metals, we do not have the necessary plans in place to ensure that you get your best processed materials out. So what happens is that most companies, they would apply to get an export permit, and from there, we would need certain requirements for them to take them out. Because that which I'm aware of, specifically for the country, it's electronic waste, which is just a challenge. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. The other last question from Sebastian Mwoki is asking, are the treatment facilities accredited, or how do you select them? Are the treatment facilities accredited, or how do you select them?
Oh, okay. If I may come in.
Okay.
The treatment facilities that we use as generators, we only use facilities that are accredited. And as Kagiso has indicated, that you are not allowed by law to open up your own treatment facility without the authorization from the authorities. So the service providers that we use, yes, are accredited, and we do insist that they submit documentation before they are even appointed. And we also conduct inspections of these facilities before they are even appointed. So how we select them is that we go out on a tender, and the potential service providers then submit all the required documentation, the authorizations that Kagiso mentioned earlier on, in terms of transportation, the treatment facilities that they are going to use, and even the disposal facilities that they are going to use. So in a case where you as a treatment facility does not have a disposal facility where you would then take your treated waste to, you need to show us the contract between you and that treatment facility. So we do use only use the authorized facilities to treat our waste.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we are running out of time. There is still one more question from the chat. I don't know, from the moderator, Nafi.
Yes, I think we need to be wrapping up. So maybe let's check quickly, then we wrap up in the next one.
Okay, thank you very much. The question is from Evans. Is there analysis of testing platforms to understand which amongst them produce the highest amounts of waste? This would also be an incentive to re-engineer their machines better, as much as it is a long-term solution. Once again, Evans is saying, is there analysis of the testing platforms to understand which amongst them produce the highest amounts of waste? This would be an incentive to the manufacturing companies to re-engineer their machines better, as much as it is a long-term solution.
Yes, as I've mentioned earlier on, that the extended producer responsibility is lacking, and especially in the field that we are in. Currently, we don't conduct any analysis of the platforms, the testing platforms that we are using to determine the volume or the toxicity of the waste that we have. But I guess this is one of the things that we are discussing nationally, and even with bodies such as the ASLM and CDC, so that we can have a way forward on it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for the questions. Back to the moderator.
Thank you, Marshall, and thank you, everyone. I think we need to be wrapping off in the next 2 minutes. I hope you have also gained quite a few important points here. I picked that South Africa is able to quantify their waste. I see Marshall mentioned that they produce about 1.1, I think, thousand million kgs, and I think about 7% of which is chemical waste. So I think as we reflect on this, we need to be thinking in our countries, are we able to quantify the waste that we are producing, just like Evans has asked? Well, I think she mentioned things like waste information management system. I found it quite interesting. We usually talk about health information management system, lab information management system. That's also interesting. The issue of penalties. I would also be interested to know whether there are already other people that have been convicted, in as much as Kagiso also mentioned that there are also quite a number of applications for really companies that do want to treat the waste, that, and the ability for many governmental organizations to work together. This is a typical example. We have Kagiso from the Development of Environment working with Marcella from the National Laboratory Systems. I think I will want to hand over to two of my colleagues quickly in a minute. Kelly, if you have anything, then Charles, if you have any announcement for the next session.
Okay, thank you very much. I think it has been a very, very vibrant discussion. Sorry for the technical challenges we faced, but I thank the team for troubleshooting and making sure that everything runs well. We'll be passing, just keep your ears on the wall. We'll be sending invite for our next eco session, but as well, we are also planning a face-to-face meeting somewhere in October. We'll be giving you details. Quite a lot in the pipeline coming. Otherwise, thank you very much for the discussion. South African team, thank you for the lessons that you have led the entire community to learn from. Thank you. That is it.
Shirley wants to make it.
And I just wanted to say thank you to the South African team on behalf of CDC. And for our next session, we know that you all are waiting for us to get out the assessment tool. We had hoped to have some assessments done by then. We're working diligently to get that to you as soon as possible. And for next month's session, we may have the countries that have requested specific TA to have 2 of them present what is already ongoing for waste management. And by then, we will definitely make sure that we have the tool to you. So thanks everyone for your patience on that.
Thank you, Shirley. And thank you everyone for attending. Like just as mentioned, we look forward to our next session at the end of this month. Thank you and goodbye.